Welcome to another episode of the Sports Corner Podcast. My name is Nick. I'm joined by my great friend Steven, and tonight we're going to be talking about the Big Ten, talking about some of the predictions for the upcoming college football season. This is episode 3 of season 3 of the Sports Corner Podcast. So glad that you guys are joining us, either live right here on twitch.tv/PastorNick86, where we record every Monday night starting at 9 o'clock Eastern. Or you might be joining us on our YouTube video that is posted every Monday afternoon, or you might be joining us on your favorite podcast app, also, or Tuesday afternoon, I should say, also posted on Tuesdays. And so, however you're joining us, thank you so much. We hope that you will enjoy tonight's show. Steven, how are you doing, buddy?
Fantastic, as always. It's always fun to talk to you at 9 o'clock on Monday nights. It's not the only time I enjoy talking to you, but
okay. Well, I give the best comms no matter what time we're talking, whether that's in a podcast or when we're playing Call of Duty. So it is what it is. Enjoy it. Before we jump Before we jump into the schedule for tonight's show, just a couple of pre-show or pre-topic announcements. If you are a listener of this podcast, I'm really going to encourage you to join our Discord server. The link is in our chat right now if you're watching live. If not, I'll post it in the show notes. You can also find it on our Twitter feed and stuff like that. But our Discord is a great way to come and talk about and weigh in on the things that we've been discussing, talk about sports, all that kind of stuff, ask fantasy questions, anything like that. Just a great way to engage a good community. Not only an opportunity to talk about sports, but also to talk about video games in general, life in general. It's a great, fun little community, and we would love for you to be a part of it. So,
talk about beards, too.
Talk about beards. Got a beard channel. What can I say? Listen, one of our listeners, Whitey, loves my beard, so.
Well, somebody has to.
Yep. All right.
One more free note. Okay. We're not doing winners and losers again this week. We will get into that.
Once this football season starts. Yeah.
But I am giving a winner yet again because I break the rules.
Why wouldn't you?
This winner goes to Arizona Diamondbacks starting pitcher Tyler Gilbert. He started his first Major League Baseball game of the day.
Yeah.
Threw a no-hitter.
I
think you retire, right?
I mean, why wouldn't you?
You can literally only get better by doing a perfect game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so rare. I think you just quit.
I saw a really cool information that I think could be a helmet sticker or a winner for Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm.
Which group did I send that in? Was that our...
I don't know.
I sent that to you, didn't I? This was a really cool stat. I got it right here. Okay. Calvin Johnson was drafted, played, retired, and inducted into the Hall of Fame, all in between Tom Brady's 7th and 22nd NFL season. That dude's a robot. He is not real. I think he's
actually a robot.
What if they just slowly have been replacing him with robotic parts throughout the years?
You saw the picture of him and Tony Dungy, right?
That's why he doesn't play in the rain because it might mess up the circuitry. I don't know.
This is impressive. So he threw 102 pitches. Really impressive number for 9 innings. Mm-hmm. Only 64 were strikes.
Wow.
He went 9 innings and only threw 64 strikes. That's
If I knew anything about baseball, I would be either impressed or not impressed by that stat.
That's fair.
Yep. Okay. All right. So here is the rundown for tonight's show. We're going to be breaking down the Big Ten. We're going to be talking about their new coach. We're going to be talking about some of the big games that we view coming out of the conference this year. We're going to talk about our favorites in the East and West divisions. We'll mention a dark horse or two, our Heisman contenders, our conference picks. We'll have a couple of questions and or interesting notes. And then we're going to get out of the Big Ten conversation and we'll jump into our Outside the Stadium segment where we like to talk about maybe something bigger than just the game itself. We talk about maybe how sports and politics or sports and real life or athletes in real life are intersecting. And tonight we're going to touch very briefly on the NIL, which is the name, image, likeness law that was recently passed or thing that was changed. But we're not going to talk about that overall. That's probably a topic that needs to be discussed in a full episode at some point. but I want to just touch on it briefly in regards to some high school stuff that's going on. And then we're going to end the night with our favorite segment, everyone's favorite segment, our Mount Rushmore. And tonight we're going to break down our best or most favorite fast food French fries. So be thinking about that, because when it comes time to that, chat, we want you to weigh in on your favorite as well. So be thinking about that so you can let us know. And as always, whether you're watching live or you're listening later and interacting with us in the Discord or on Twitter or wherever, tell us where we get it right, tell us where we get it wrong. With that said, Steven, let us start with our Big Ten breakdown, starting with your favorite, the guy that you've done a lot of research on, new coaches.
I've done so much research. I'm not even going to mention his records. I'm going to let you do that.
Wow, okay.
Rhett Bielema, the only new coach in the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
He has 24 years of head coach or of coaching experience. He was the third coach to win 12 games in his first year as a head coach. That's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
He's historically been a ground and pound coach, so he really likes to run the ball. I don't really think that's going to work for him in the Big Ten, especially now. But hey, it might. And then my final note on Rhett Bielema: he was an all-state tuba player in high school.
Hey, now, I feel like you're saying that kind of making fun of him.
No.
But as someone who was in the band in high school, making all states difficult. Now, I will say this. What state did he make that in?
That's
you don't know, do you? You don't know.
I didn't get that.
You're coming here with incomplete information. Because if he's like all state in Rhode Island, I might not be impressed. But if it's like California, maybe I'm impressed. I don't know.
He is from...
Guys, we have him actually looking this up. This is fantastic.
He was born in Prophetstown, Illinois.
Yeah. Can I tell you something about that stat?
Don't care.
Prophetstown? Hey,
Don't care.
Prophetstown.
Rhett Bielema. He's been a head coach at 2 universities before starting his third job here at Illinois. Those 2, did you mention them already?
No, I didn't. I did not even talk about it.
You didn't. All right. So he was a head coach first in the Big Ten at Wisconsin. While he was at Wisconsin, he went 68-24 overall with a 37-19 record in conference play. Now, this is actually a pretty impressive, in my opinion, record. In fact, I think he was getting Wisconsin in a really, really good place. And then he jumped to Arkansas over in the SEC. Now, Steven, do you know why he at least has claimed he jumped over to the SEC other than wanting to coach in the SEC in general?
I have no idea.
He said that his assistant coaches
Better tuba players?
Better tuba players, yes. No, he said his assistant coaches were not getting paid enough, and that's why he wanted to jump over. Now, obviously, I think playing in the SEC was a part of that as well, and whatever the reason, that's his choice. But things really didn't go his way when he made the swap over from the Big Ten at Wisconsin to the SEC at Arkansas, because while at Arkansas, he went 29-34, so that's a losing record. But worse than that, in conference play, he went 11-29. Not great in conference play. Did not keep his job. I believe he was fired right after losing to Missouri in a game that they had a 14-point lead twice during the game and somehow managed to give away and lose that game. So overall, as a head coach, he has a 97-58 record. He has had success in the Big Ten, but here's what I'll say about that. To the best of my knowledge, Illinois is not Wisconsin. And additionally, it is 2021 and not 2006, which was kind of when he was really getting Wisconsin rolling, although he had success all the way each year that he was at Wisconsin. And all I'll say about this is I don't expect them to finish in the top half of the conference, but we'll see. Let's see what he can do.
I mean, he was better than the next guy Arkansas hired.
Yeah, that's fair. You're not wrong.
Do you know how, I know this is off topic, do you know how many games Chad Morris won at Arkansas?
I feel like we talked about this at one point. Was it like 8?
He won 4 games.
Oh, because I was going to say 3, and I thought that was way too low.
He has
man.
He has a .182 win percentage.
Oh, that is rough. Poor guy.
For comparison's sake, Sam Pittman won 3 games last year.
Yeah, so. That is not good. All right, what else do you have for us, if anything, about Rhett Bielema?
That's it. It's a tuba player.
Tuba player. We'll see. I think it's interesting. I mean, here's someone who has had success in that league, but at a time when that league was not what it is now. And so he's coming into a lesser school that has lesser facilities, lesser recruiting base. And so
I'll say
can he
this.
do it? I don't know.
I'll say this. We've talked about this before in regards to Big 12 teams and how they could be successful. Illinois is not going to win playing the same game as Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State. They're not going to get the athletes they are. So you have to do something different. And so, we've talked about why Kansas State has been successful summit in the Big 12 is they do something different than all the other Big 12 teams. And it's odd to play against. When you play the same thing every week, you get used to it, and then they throw a wrinkle in it. So maybe just running the ball 75 times a game will work. I don't think so, but hey, it's worth a shot.
Well, I think running the ball and having a solid run game where you're controlling the clock actually is a way for a team like Illinois to overcome some of the matchup discrepancies. But the problem is, as you mentioned, they don't have the quality of player, and not even the 1 versus 1. Although obviously you would expect your Ohio States, maybe your Penn State, your Michigan, you're expecting them obviously to have better players overall. But it's just the depth. I don't think those teams can, when they're having to sub out linemen to keep the running back in there. I think that's where it weighs down. So, yeah, we'll see what happens there. We'll see maybe if we pick them as our dark horses or maybe our conference picks. I don't think we will. Spoiler alert. But let's move on to some of the big games in league play. What do you got for us?
I led off with Illinois, Nebraska.
Okay.
Rhett Bielema. Maybe he plays the tuba as he walks out. So I'm really just harping on the tuba.
You're really fascinating on this tuba thing, man.
That's all I've got.
That's hyper focus.
Former Tennessee coach was a band member in high school.
He was trumpet player, right?
Lyle Butch Jones, yes.
Or was he saxophone?
He was something weird.
Who cares?
Anyway, that is the first real college football game of the season. There's some other games, but the first game between real teams. Do you know where that game is played?
I don't. Is it a neutral site?
It is in Dublin, Ireland.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So kicking off the season, that is August 28th. So the weekend before. It's kind of a week 0 kind of thing.
The frustrating thing about that is I really think this kind of matchup could be a very good matchup for these two teams. Trying to say, okay, is Scott Frost finally getting things turned around a little bit? We know he has struggled since being at Nebraska. Is Rhett Bielema going to come in and make a big splash? Was he the right hire or not? And instead what we're going to get is a bunch of guys who are fatigued and are jet lagged and who stayed up way too late doing a pub crawl across Ireland. And we're not going to see as quality of football as I think we can if these two teams are meeting at a little bit later time in the season, where they had some things turning already, and it wasn't week 0, different don't get me wrong, I like those different continent games, but I don't know.
The real question is, will Rhett Bielema drink a beer out of his tuba?
Out of his tuba. Okay. Well, how do I meet you? Good night. Okay. I have Michigan at Washington. I think we mentioned this when we were talking about the Pac-12 breakdown, so I'm not going to go into any great detail about this, except to say this, that when I was breaking down Pac-12 games and I saw that Washington was playing Michigan, I said, yeah, that's a good test for Washington to see what they can do. But when you look at it the other way around, when Michigan is this is our big game, out of conference game, you're like, do better. So yeah. It's almost like a reverse big game. The fact that this is considered a big game for Big Ten out of conference play, a little bit sad.
I'm kind of backwards this week. Last week we did not have any ACC in conference games because that conference is a dumpster fire other than Clemson. Mm-hmm. This week I've focused really on conference games. I think there's some good teams in the Big Ten. Not great teams. We'll talk about Ohio State's dominance later, but there's some good teams in this conference. And one I have circled is Ohio State at Indiana. Last year's game finished 49-42 in Columbus. And it was a really fun game last year. Obviously a lot of points scored, back and forth affair. And Indiana returns their starting quarterback. Ohio State does not. So maybe that gets them over the hump this year. Okay. Probably not, but certainly one that I'll tune in for.
Also worth mentioning, we mentioned it in detail last week, so go back and listen if you want the breakdown on it. But Ohio State and Oregon do play. That will actually, I think, be a good matchup to see which of those teams is looking good early in the season. But again, if you want to hear more breakdown on that, go back to listen to last week where we talk about that in more depth. And then, of course, I have Ohio State and Michigan circled. That's just an interesting game every year. But is it really that big of a matchup, though? I mean, has Harbaugh even come close, really, in that game? He certainly hasn't won it. Not once.
I'll mention that later. Don't you worry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I know you will. Any of the big games you got written down for this?
Penn State, Ohio State. I have no
Okay.
idea what Penn State will look like this year.
Yeah.
They've been down, but they enjoy and have been that thorn in Ohio State's side.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see if they can do it this year. It is in Columbus, which is a little deflating.
Sure.
But that's the week after Ohio State goes to Indiana. So either potential for if they lose that game, potential to come in a little stung. If they win that game, maybe they come in with a little high.
All right. I can appreciate that. Well, let's move right into our favorites for the conference this year. Now, you have the East Division and you have the West Division. Tell me, am I imagining this? Didn't it used to be called the Leaders and the Legends? Do they still do that? Did that just go away? Did they fade it out because it was dumb? What's going on there?
I never called it that. So
I know you know. I'm not saying
correct. I think you're correct.
I think I am. I think when they added some of the other teams, well, I feel like it's when they added like Nebraska and them is when they went to those names, and it never made sense because you're like the Legends, but Ohio State and Penn State aren't a legend teams, but they're a leader teams, and then you're saying like, what if you're in the other ones, you're not really like leading in the conference, but you're a legend. I didn't like it made no sense, but I don't even think they use them anymore. But I do want to point out
Oklahoma would be a leader and Texas would be a legend, right?
Yeah, it must be something like that.
But okay, so that can't play football anymore.
East and West divisions. What do you have for us? Start us off with the East, I guess.
I didn't do it that way.
Oh, okay.
I did my favorites as Ohio State in the field.
Okay, that's fair.
There's really no point in breaking this down too far, I don't think. Ohio State has outscored opponents 777 to 266 under Ryan Day in Big Ten games. It's an average of 45 to 15. 45 to 15.
Not a bad score. Here's the frustrating
17
thing.
Games.
I remember when we talked, we had a podcast right after Ryan Day got that job, and it was the year after Lincoln Riley got the job, and Lincoln Riley did some great things, and I remember saying, like, there's no way this is going to work out for Ohio State the same way it worked out for Oklahoma. There's no way that both of these teams bring in a young assistant and they both just are dynamite. Well, I was wrong.
Sometimes we're wrong.
I was wrong.
We also didn't like our veterans. So.
True, yeah. I also remember not being super fond of Cristobal at Oregon, and he's just won a couple of back-to-back to...
Didn't even pronounce his name right.
I think I did. I think I just kind of put a little bit of I threw on my 4 years of Spanish in high school accent, and that probably came across a little racially insensitive. So I've deleted that podcast from the archive.
Good. Don't ever run for president. We'll come back to that.
Yeah. Well, many other things that disqualify me.
In fairness to being a good podcast host here, I did give some more in the field. I broke down the field some.
Okay.
I have Penn State. Can they bounce back from a rough year? They do return their starting quarterback, top two receivers. They have some talent in their running back room, albeit unknown. But they replaced 4 key players from their defensive line last year, and they allowed 8 plays of over 40 yards, which is not great.
Mm-hmm.
They also turned the ball over 17 times. So you can't do that.
Not good.
Reminder, I think they played 8 games last year. Is that Yeah, so 17 turnovers in 8 games. It's not a great per game average.
Not exactly where you want to be.
Iowa, although I think they're just Iowa, they're going to do what Iowa always does. They'll be good. They won't be great. They have a good running back. I think you'll mention him. I won't get too far into that. But I don't trust their starting quarterback, who had a 57% completion percentage.
Okay.
Then finally, Wisconsin. Can they finally make that jump back to the upper echelon? I know they've played in the title game, but have they ever really been competitive in the title game? Their starting quarterback, Graham Mertz, flashed a little bit last year, but he's got to take a big step this year if they're going to really compete. The defense is certainly good enough, but they need their offense to generate more big plays to really be competitive, and that starts, like I said, with Graham Mertz, but trying to find a receiver or a running back or somebody to kind of take that next step. That's it.
Okay. Well, I did mine a little bit different, although we hit on a lot of the same stuff. I kind of broke mine down by my favorites in either division and kind of went from there. So same as you, I'll start with actually the West Division where it doesn't have Ohio State. And I kind of, same 2 teams that you mentioned, Iowa and Wisconsin as the 2 teams to watch. I'm leaning a little more Iowa at this moment, just because I think that they have been making some steady improvements. They went on a 6-game winning streak at the end of the last season, and they have a
Tennessee did that once.
Yeah, once, and that was it.
And then Burr got fired.
Yeah. And so I think they also have a good ground game, and I do think that's going to be an important way to beat some of these teams in the conference, and especially to beat Ohio State, is to be able to control the clock, keep their offense off the field, and be able to just manage things. We've seen that as teams that beat Oklahoma, and I know that's a little bit of a stretch of a comparison, but to compare like an Ohio State, a powerful offense, and Jaron Iron Ranger, who's in our chat, is a Big Ten kind of guy, and I think is expressing a sentiment that we all have, that Ohio State is great. None of us just like them. But if you want to beat that team, you got to keep their offense off the field. You got to control the tempo of the game, and perhaps Iowa has a chance to do that. With that said, though, Wisconsin does have a better schedule to get there, and what they have lacked in offensive firepower, they have made up for in having a pretty solid defense over the last couple of years. And that's something else that you're going to need if you're going to beat a team like Ohio State or anyone else that might come out of the other division, or even just to get to that championship game in general, is you're going to have a defense that's able to make stops and get off the field and give your offense another chance to put some points up. So those are my two West favorites. In the East, I have Penn State as a favorite, kind of like you mentioned. Is this a year that they can finally kind of get it together? James Franklin has done well with them as a school. He's had several 11-year winning seasons. Now, last year they had a rough time. But again, as I told you last week, if every team did not try to do something zany and weird last year outside of the big boys that were going to do well no matter what, then you missed an opportunity, because everyone just gets to put a nice asterisk next to last year's season and say COVID, right? COVID. Whether it was or not, you could say it. And so can Penn State get over the hump? Can they do something different? Can they make a big splash? We'll see. Obviously, the favorite of the conference, the favorite of the East Division, the favorite to make the playoffs, the favorites to potentially be a national championship coming out of this conference is Ohio State. And unfortunately, it is Ohio State until they prove otherwise. Just like we talked about last week with Clemson, obviously, and even to a lesser extent Oregon, it seems like as we're breaking down every conference, there is a fairly large disparity between the top of the top and the rest of the conference, with the Pac-10 being the Pac-12 being the least of that. Oregon's definitely in that category, but they are less so than Clemson, who's won, I don't know, what was it, 5 or 6 straight. Oklahoma's won, 4 or so now in a row, 5 or so now in a row. And now we've got Ohio State that just keeps winning. They're the most balanced team. They have a coach that seemingly has it figured out. So until they prove that they're not going to get it figured out, they've got to be considered the favorites.
My only argument against the Iowa win streak, that was against Michigan State, Minnesota, Penn State, Nebraska, Illinois, Wisconsin.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm not saying, when I say favorites, I'm not necessarily...
Exactly, murderer's row there.
Well, no, but it is the teams that they'll still have to beat to get back to the conference championship. I mean, it's not like you were naming off Toledo, and I mean, you were naming off conference teams. I mean, that's what they got to play.
True.
So,
man, the bottom of the Big Ten is so bad.
Honestly, we've known this for a while, but as we've been looking through these conferences so far, we've looked through the Pac-12, we've looked through the ACC, and now through the Big Ten. And this is what I've noticed. Each conference has one really good team, 2 or 3 teams that can compete on any given year if things go their way, and then a lot of trash. And it's funny because or at least a lot of people thought, I think me too, that the more fair we made things, the less of a disparity between teams would occur, right? When we made sure, numbers of scholarships were more even, and we weren't giving, swimming scholarships to football players and things like that, that really we would see some of this skill gap close. And you might see stud players on other teams, but we're not seeing full teams come together. So that's something interesting to keep an eye on as we continue to move it. But, I mean... It's
definitely weird. I think more than ever, I'm rooting for this super conference to happen, because I want to see a conference that has Oklahoma, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State. I want to see them play more than just in the playoff every year. So we'll move on to your dark horse or horses. Right. What do you got?
Really just one, because I feel like this conference is so poor that...
I mean, it's over, so there's really no chance. But
Right.
It's fun to dream.
It's fun to speculate. So I've speculated Northwestern. They've won the West 2 of the last 3 years. They have upped their offensive production each year over the last couple of years. Not drastically and not in an impressive way. So I'm not saying they're a favorite. I'm saying maybe they keep moving in the right direction. I don't think this is enough to put them into consideration of even winning their division. But if the chips fall properly for them, if things go well, I think someone like Northwestern has a taste for what winning feels like. They know how to do that, and they might be able to pull it off.
Certainly possible. Probably not really, but whatever.
But who else you can say? Yeah.
My dark horse is Indiana.
Okay.
So last year, I mentioned they played Ohio State tough. I know that doesn't count. A moral victory is still a loss, but they should be getting Michael Penix Jr. back. He tore his ACL last year. Prior to doing that, though, he threw for 1,600 yards in only 6 games. 14 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. He gets his leading receiver, Ty Freifogel, back. Just had to say that name. Top 10 name in college football, right? Ty Freifogel. He also gets back 4 starters on the offensive line. They brought in a transfer running back from USC, who I think is a very big pickup for them to kind of balance out that offensive attack. Then on the other side of the ball, they bring back 9 starters from a team that led the league in takeaways. They do lose one of their safeties who was who did have 4 interceptions, but I think Tom Allen is poised to surprise some people, assuming that Penix Jr. is fully healthy.
Okay. Well, you mentioned Penix Jr. there. Let's go right into Heisman contenders. Did he make your list?
He did. So I don't really see the Heisman winner coming from this conference.
Right.
But, again, to be a good podcast host, I do have Michael Penix Jr. listed for all the reasons listed above. He had a really nice year, kind of his breakout year. Last year, he's got weapons back. He's got potentially a better running back. He's got 4 starters on the offensive line, have another year to gel together. The key is that ACL injury, both physically and mentally. That can be a tough one to overcome. But what we've seen the last few years is that surgery has become so routine that there's really not a lot of decline like we saw, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. So I think he has got to be at the top in this conference.
Okay. So I kind of went off the beaten path a little bit, just because, same thing as you're saying, I don't think that there's a chance that the Heisman winner comes out of this conference. But with that said, someone that I'm interested to watch play, and I would love to see him go on a run and get some Heisman love, is Tyler Goodson. He's a running back from Iowa. He averaged over 5 yards per carry last year. He did not have any turnovers. I think he had like 7 or 8 touchdowns, so it wasn't a whole lot, but they didn't play many games. But he also proved that he could be a bit of a threat in the passing game. He was catching some stuff out of the backfield, making some plays in space. And so he was, no doubt about it, he's a dark horse Heisman guy. He's probably not going to get any love. But if he can put together a pretty good season and no one else in the conference makes a big spark, then he could get the love, because it seems like they always want at least one person that, at the very least, they're hyping up during the season so that they're getting a little bit of representation for there as well. I also have, I'm just going to put this, Ohio State star player, right? Whoever that is, that person will get Heisman love. That person will be talked about, and we'll have to see a highlight reel of them before every game. And, who will that be? I don't know. It could be one of the 3 guys that are vying for the starting quarterback job. It looks like that's going to be Shrout. But one of the other guys, if they win it out and they do well, they could absolutely get there. Or I think you could see probably, I don't know how to pronounce this exactly. Is it Olave? He's a wide receiver.
It's Olave.
Yeah, Olave. And then Wilson's also a stud wide receiver. And I think either one of those guys, again, if they feel like, and I think what hurts Stroud the most is that he is young. And not that young people can't win if they can't get there. We've seen that ceiling, so to speak, has been shattered. But I feel like still, if one of those guys is out there making the plays for him, if they're the ones that are, scoring the touchdowns, breaking off big runs, CeeDee Lamb style, stuff like that, then as opposed to the, young quarterback getting the recognition and love, then it could be someone like the stud wide receiver who's making the plays.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw last year with the Devontae Smith, that they're not afraid to give it to receiver. It's going to be hard. I mean, I think you're going to have to really beat what Devontae Smith did last year to, to get there. And, we've seen that in the past where, there's a quarterback that has a really fantastic year, but his numbers weren't as good as the guy the year before, and then maybe give it to a running back that year instead. So I think it's going to take a lot to get a receiver there. My second Heisman is kind of a dark horse, I guess, is Penn State quarterback Sean Clifford. So he does have the second most touchdown passes in the Big Ten over the last 2 years. I don't know if that means among active or not, but I don't know how many they bring back. But still, he has the ability. I mentioned earlier he turned the ball over a lot. But he's got the arm strength. He's got some weapons there, two really nice receivers. And they brought in a new offensive coordinator in Mike Irsich, who was formerly at Texas. He didn't have a great year at Texas, but he did put up good numbers while he was at Oklahoma State. He was with Ohio State for a little while as well. So I don't know if it will translate. He was kind of a co-OC for a while, and a lot of people think that it was the other guys, not him necessarily, that were the reason for the explosiveness. But we'll see what he can do at Penn State. He's got an experience, like I said, Clifford's an experienced guy, and we'll see what he can do. So it's time now for your conference pick.
My conference pick, yeah.
Super, super difficult, and everybody's on their toes waiting for this.
Well, this is it is tough. And I think I'm going to surprise some people with this one. But if I had to pick one team right now, I would say it's got to be the Gophers. Because Iron Ranger gifted 5 Tier 1 subs before the show started and told me he was going to need a refund if I did not pick them as conference champs. So I need that money to support my adoption, and so that's who I'm going to pick. Go Gophers, chew your way through the competition. I don't know, War Eagle, what's your catchphrase? No, in a more serious note, the Gophers aside of the great state of Minnesota, Skuma?
I don't know what that means.
Skuma. I'm gonna have to hear that in our chat, in the hangout on Friday. You're gonna have to yell that out for me, Jaren. Ski-uma. Okay. Go Gophers. No, realistically, conference pick has to be Ohio State. They've won it 4 years in a row. There's no reason to think that they're not going to do it again and make that 5 years in a row. Obviously, anything's possible. And just like Clemson is starting, with some new quarterback and some different things, Ohio State's doing some of that too, but there's no reason to say that they're not going to have this thing locked up and win it. And we'll talk more about Ohio State here in a second. I think we should jump to that question first when we get there, so we can talk about that. But yeah, it's Ohio State, right?
Absolutely. You mentioned they've won 4 straight. Here are the results of those games. 2017, 27-21. They beat Wisconsin. Close-ish. 2018, 45-24 over Northwestern. 2019, 34-21 over Wisconsin. 2020, 22-10 over Northwestern. They don't even try in that game. They just know it's the final,
it's like the warm-up to the playoffs.
Stay healthy, get me to the playoff game, right? Yeah, that's all they care about. Well, you wanted to jump to Ohio State.
I did. Before we jump, let me give a little bit of thanks here to the chat. We got chat going on. Iron Ranger must have appreciated the little bit of love we had for the Minnesota Gophers there. He gifted a Tier 1 sub to Whitey141, who, as you mentioned earlier, I don't know if it was pre-show or during the, actually, I think it was during our introduction about the beard commentary. Yeah, Whitey jumped in the chat and told me I had a nice beard going on tonight. So Iron Ranger gifted him the sub. Thank you, Jaren, for the gifted sub. Whitey, welcome to the chat, as well as to our others hanging out with us tonight. Yeah, let's answer some questions here.
All right. My first question for you. Can Ohio State win it all with a new quarterback?
Now, when you say win it all, are you talking win the conference or win the national championship?
No, we know they're winning the conference.
Okay.
We're just pushing that aside.
That does change.
And they win the national championship.
That changes my answer a little bit. So here's what I'll say. Yes, I think they can, and here's why. Because they don't need their quarterback to be a superstar for them to have a highly functional and to be a highly winning team. Now, that's not to say that someone like Stroud or Miller or McCord won't be studs, because they could be. And again, it looks like it's going to be Stroud, but they don't have to be superstars for them to not only be successful in conference, but to make a deep playoff run, win a national championship as well. Because Ohio State has some of the best receivers in the country, and those guys are going to help any quarterback look good to make plays. I think back to what we saw Oklahoma do 2 years ago with, I'm just blanking on his name now, who transferred over from Alabama, Hurts, who was, don't get me wrong, a great quarterback and an experienced one. So this isn't a great necessarily one-to-one, example. But what we saw was that the receivers made him look better than he was, right? And so I think the receivers coming in, they can help Ohio State's new starting quarterback to look better than he's going to be. But not only that, they have a very veteran and talented offensive line that's going to help a new quarterback with having more time to throw and to give him time to get settled in, but then also to help them establish a running game so that you don't have to have a quarterback being the only one making plays, right? If you can get these receivers, getting them easy passes in space, letting them do things with their athleticism, have an offensive line that keeps you on your feet and allows you to get the ball handed off and get these to other playmakers, right? We don't have to see it all be on the quarterback's back. Now, also keeping that in mind with some of the other teams we might see in the playoffs, a team like Clemson that's also going to have a young quarterback, a team like Alabama, who I guess they're returning their quarterback, aren't they? I've really not.
Yeah.
No, they've the new one too, don't they?
Yeah, Mac Jones.
So they're going to have a new quarterback there. Out of the Big 12, we haven't really broken them down yet, but safe to say my bet's going to be Oklahoma. They'll be returning one, but only a second-year starter. So there's a good chance we're going to see probably a less experienced quarterback making a deep run in the playoffs. So no reason to think that Ohio State with a new quarterback can't get it done.
I think they absolutely can. And you're not kidding about the receivers. I feel like I could probably play quarterback this fall and at least be competitive with those guys. They do have one of the best offensive lines in the country. They have a head coach that just dominates that conference, like we mentioned.
Yep.
Has not lost in conference play. The defense's side of the ball is where they've kind of fallen apart the last couple of years when they get to the playoff. They have a great pass rusher. They have a really good defensive line. That's not going to change this year. They have a lot of talent on that line. Kerry Coombs he's able to piece it together in conference every year, but they just seem to fall apart in those playoff games on the defense side of the ball. So I think they can win it all for all the reasons you mentioned. They have talent elsewhere, but I don't think they're going to be able to do it with the defense that they have. I just think the talent gap there, not the talent gap, they have the talent, but I think the level of defense they play is not up to par with what Clemson has done, with what Alabama has done. So yes, they can, but I don't think they.
Yeah, makes sense. We've seen the defense be a national championship causing defect in a lot of teams over the years. And it just brings you back to the old adage that has been true for a long time. Defense wins championships. All right.
Second question. You ready?
Yeah.
This is it. The long awaited.
All right.
Will John Harbaugh ever get it turned around in Michigan?
I almost feel like this question should be better asked is this the year John Harbaugh finally gets chased away from Michigan? Because in a sense, we have to define turnaround. I don't see any reason to have any newfound hope in Michigan and John Harbaugh as a team. Now, he has been there long enough since 2015 to establish players and a culture for his program and his players. Everything that is happening at Michigan at this moment is squarely on his shoulders. And he hasn't turned it around yet, so why am I going to think he's turning it around now? It almost feels like right now they're banking on having a new play caller to come in and shake things up, which, by the way, is never a good thing. I mean, not that bringing in new coaches is bad, but to say, like, okay, this is the guy that's going to come breathe some life in it instead of our head coach who should be doing this himself. But the guy they bring in, Mike McDonald, to come shake things up, he's an NFL guy with no play calling experience. So why exactly are we putting all of our trust in him anyway? So no, I don't think this is a year that Michigan can get things turned around. I don't think this is a year that they finish anywhere higher than probably the middle of the conference. So my question is this the year that Michigan finally pulls the plug on the Jim Harbaugh experience and experiment? And if so, when and what do they do next?
we hear a lot. You have to give the guy enough time to turn it around.
And I appreciate that.
You have to give him the time to get it done. Well, we're entering year 7.
Mm-hmm.
Harbaugh has never beat Ohio State. So you have to go back to, let's see, Rich Rod, who only got to play him 3 times. It was 0-3.
And gone.
And gone.
And was a Michigan guy, right? Rich Rod was a Michigan guy.
Yeah. That is the only other guy other than Langdon Biff Lee in 1900 who coached 1 year and tied Ohio State. That's it. Everybody else has at least beaten Ohio State once.
I mean, here's the thing.
He's 0-6.
And a team like Michigan or a team like Ohio State is going to measure the success of their coach more off the outcome of that game than probably conference or national championships. I mean, you ask them, what would you rather do, win the conference or beat Ohio State? They're going to say beat Ohio State, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to say that 8 out of 10 times, or 8 out of 10 fans are going to say that. And for him to come in with no wins after as many years as he's been there.
6 years. He's 0-6.
And to still have his job, it's impressive. Well, I give Michigan a lot of credit as an organization for saying we're going to give you time to figure things out, to build a culture, to build a program, to get things set up the way that you want, to shape and mold these players. Now, but, dude, these are your players. Everyone that's playing there was recruited by you in the system that you wanted, in the way that you wanted, and you still can't get it done. And as Iron Ranger saying in our chat, he's predicting Michigan to go 5-7 and Harbaugh gone. That sounds about right for me. 5-7 is probably about where I would have picked him.
Yeah, exactly. The closest he's ever been was in 2016 when they lost 30-27.
Yeah. Okay.
The combined score in his 6 games is 221-126.
And if I recall correctly, I didn't do the research on this, but it's not even like he has a dominant record over Michigan State either, right? I mean,
I think he's 3-3 or 4-2 maybe.
Not only are you not winning the conference, but if you're not even beating your biggest rival or even like what's supposed to be your little brother, right? This is a problem.
Yeah. So I mentioned 221-126 last is his overall combined score. They've given up 118 points in the last 2 contests. So they've scored 126 in 6 games, giving up 118 in 2 of them.
That's not what you want to be.
He's 0-4 in bowl games, has yet to even sniff winning the conference. And you mentioned he hired a new defense coordinator, but that's one of 6 new assistants he hired. 6. In his 7th year, he hired 6 new assistants. He gets Wisconsin, Nebraska, Penn State, and Michigan State on the road. Is it too early to say hot seat?
Well, if that seat's not hot going into the season, then, I mean, again, give
him an extension.
I give Michigan a lot of credit for giving him a chance to get things the way they need to be. I get frustrated when programs run a coach out after 2 or 3 years, when they're just starting to get all of their players in, when they're just starting to get things turned around, and I really do give Michigan a lot of credit for what they've done. But if he has another year like that, if he goes 5-7 and loses to Ohio State, and they keep him, what are they doing? They are literally saying, we're okay with mediocrity at this university. We don't want to be relevant in football. We'll figure something else out. And you're muted.
My fault. I don't see 5 wins. I'm going to run through their schedule. Tell me who wins. Western Michigan.
Probably a win.
Washington.
That could be a loss.
Northern Illinois.
I would say that's a win.
Their homecoming game is week 4. And
that's never a good sign.
And it's their 4th straight home game.
Homecoming after 4 at home? You know that's not good.
They haven't played an away game. At Wisconsin. At Nebraska.
That's a loss. Nebraska. I could see them winning that game.
Versus Northwestern.
That could be a loss.
At Michigan State.
I mean, they've proven they can lose that game just as often as they can win it.
Versus Indiana.
Potentially. I could see them going that way. I could see that as a toss-up.
At Penn State.
That's a loss.
At Maryland.
If you don't win that, you fire them right there, right?
Versus Ohio State.
And that's a loss.
So, maybe Maryland.
1-1.
Maybe Michigan State.
2-2. Well, let's see. 1-1. Yeah. I mean, it's not looking good. That's a guaranteed loss. That's a
I think
guaranteed loss.
five is the ceiling.
Is the ceiling? Yeah, I'm not really seeing.
mean,
and that's everything. That's winning the games that you're supposed to win. So and probably breaking one that shouldn't win.
Yeah, and this is not. Like I said, this is year 7, and we're 5's the ceiling. Like, what are you doing at Michigan?
And it's not like
give him an extension.
It's also, I mean, what have we been sitting here saying all night? We're watching a conference. We're breaking down a conference that has one stellar team and a lot of mediocre teams underneath it. And for Michigan not to be right there in the hunt for being that next dominant team is just, it's terrible. Like, there's no greater time that they should be doing this than right now when the rest of your conference is in disarray. When you have Nebraska, which is a history program, and they're struggling. And you have teams like, Maryland, and you have teams like Indiana. These are teams that you should no doubt be wiping the floor with. Northwestern, it shouldn't be a question, and yet there's a question mark by some of these. I mean, that's not okay. I mean, how many times do we say when we're talking about SEC and like Tennessee, there's been some times where Florida's been down, and we're saying if this isn't the year that Tennessee can beat Florida, will it ever happen? And they go and they drop it somehow, and that's not acceptable, and it's cost a lot of coaches a lot of their jobs here in the state of Tennessee, and probably sometimes too soon. But at the same time, Michigan, what are you doing? Because right now you're saying we're fine with being a mediocre team.
I mean, Tennessee's how many head coaches since 2015?
Oh my gosh, I don't, 12 or 13, right?
Yeah, and right, wrong, indifferent. Maybe they don't give him enough time, whatever you want to say, but at least they're not giving a guy an extension after he does what Harbaugh's done in Michigan.
Yeah.
I don't see how they get back from this.
No, it's not a good spot to be in.
I mean, we're talking about a team that could with the way things are going, they haven't recruited well, obviously, but I mean, does anybody really want to go play for Michigan anymore? I mean, Harbaugh there or gone, this is potentially a devastating run that Harbaugh has caused to the University of Michigan's football team permanently.
Yeah. Not a good spot for them to be in. We'll see. I don't, unless he goes on a run that neither one of us are predicting or expecting, I just don't see how he keeps his job this year.
Not a chance.
Not a chance. All right, so that is the Big Ten. That's what's going on there. That's what you can maybe expect, and we'll get to listen to this here in a couple of months and just see how wrong we were as Maryland celebrates their national championship.
Harbaugh
or whatever.
Yeah,
he defeats Ohio State 99-3 or something goofy like that. But we want to transition into our second to last segment of the night, and this is called Outside the Stadium. I mentioned it at the top of the show, but this is just a time where we look at stuff going on that is touching the world of sports, whether that be an athlete or a situation or maybe some legislation, etc., and how it's playing out in the rest of the world, off the field, outside the stadium, not under the lights of a game, but how is sports and real life and things like that interacting and crossing over with each other. And so I'm going to do this as quick as I can because, again, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about the NIL, but that means name, image, and likeness. This is something that really probably seriously was a discussion point whenever, of all things, a video game was dropped. NCAA football could no longer be made because an athlete sued about their likeness being used and them getting no compensation. And years after that, this is passed, this NIL, that is stating that these college athletes can make money off of their name, off of their image, and off of their likeness. There are some rules to that. There are some caveats to that, things that they can't do with that. But we've already seen players like quarterbacks for the University of Alabama who have made probably at this point over $1 million in NIL endorsements. We've seen this players starting to sign things with companies, big companies, Nike and Under Armour and groups like that, and also little organizations like there's a Tennessee basketball player who signed with a local fast food chain that he, I guess, is a huge fan of. And so it's just a really interesting thing that I would encourage everyone to read up on, spend a little more time learning about. We'll probably break it down in more detail at some point throughout the season, or maybe use it as our outside the stadium and talk about it little by little over the course. But what I want to focus on tonight...
Quick aside.
Yeah.
Did you see that Derek King for Miami starting quarterback signed with the the pro hockey team there, the Panthers, the Florida
Oh, I
Panthers.
did not.
That's very interesting. He's the first college athlete to sign with a professional team for an NIL deal. I don't know what
So
he's
he's
going to do with them.
he's going to promote the hockey team
Apparently,
of some way. Yeah,
I've
be in their
got
commercials or
I've
something like
got
that.
no real.
That's interesting. It's really weird what we're going to see, and I won't be able to quote it. So there's an article. I'll put the article in the show notes, but it was a New York Times article that broke this down, and I went to go pull it up again, and I'll admit I don't subscribe to the New York Times, and apparently I'm out of free previews to it.
Yeah.
So maybe you're not,
the same issue.
and maybe you can go and look at it, in our show notes. But it's it was breaking down a couple of different situations that is involving the NIL and high school players. So there are several high school athletes who are opting out of high school play in order to sign NIL endorsements. Now, there are two leading faces, especially in this thing, that I want to focus on tonight. There's more than just two, obviously, but there are two that I want to focus on. The first one is a football player named Quinn Ewers, I think is how it's pronounced. He is out of Southlake, Texas, and he opted out of playing his senior year of football in order that he could graduate early and make his way to Ohio State, enroll early as a student at Ohio State so that he can start signing NIL deals. Now, this is interesting. I'm going to touch more on him and his situation here in a second. But before I do, let me introduce you to the other person that made kind of a big splash with this as a high school student. His name is Mikey Williams. He's a 17-year-old basketball player from North Carolina. And this is quoting from that article. Let me just read it to you. Mikey Williams, a 17-year-old basketball star in North Carolina, with more than 3 million followers on Instagram, signed in July with a management and marketing company to secure endorsement deals. He plans to play this season for an independent team that is not bound by the rules governing high school sports in North Carolina. Excel Sports Management, which represents Williams, told ESPN that it expects the business arrangement will earn millions of dollars for the teenager, who is not eligible for the NBA draft until 2024. This guy is about to make millions of dollars when he's not even eligible to be drafted in the NBA until 2024. That is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I picked up. So I wonder what kind of pressure this will put on these professional leagues, specifically the NBA.
Yeah.
They've been rumored for a while to drop that age limit back down. At one point, high schoolers could go straight to the NBA, and they've talked about doing it, reinstating that and allowing them to do so again. We've seen the movement recently with the G League Ignite team having 2 of the top 7 draft picks this past year. They've already brought in 2 or 3 guys for this coming year's draft that will play with the Ignite team instead of going to college. We've seen LaMelo Ball and some of these guys go play overseas in the NBL in Australia for a year. They come back and they enter the draft. And so with players being able to make this money in college or even high school, like you're talking about, does that put the pressure back on the NBA to make that move sooner than later? Or do you think this allows them to say, well, you're going to get paid now? I mean, how do you think this affects college sports, the NBA, as far as guys coming to college or going straight pro?
I don't know. In one sense, it kind of lets them say we're going to keep it the same, because one of the biggest incentives for leaving college early was to go make your money. But if I can make $1 million and still play for, UNC or Cal or whoever I'm playing for, why not stick around? Why not play it out? What if, a great recruiting tactic, Bruce Barnes, Rick Barnes. Rick Barnes. Oh man, I was like, I was mixing up. I knew I was mixing up 2 former and a current Tennessee coach, but I just couldn't get it right. Rick Barnes at Tennessee, right? He says to this player, yeah, you could be 1 and done, or you can be 2 and a little bit higher, stick around 3 or 4 years and go be a high first-round pick. And here's the great thing. You don't have to sacrifice the money now. You can still get paid millions of dollars, potentially, and stick around and play through your senior year. So it actually could be beneficial for that.
I think this will definitely help college baseball. I mean, you look at here's the minor league average salaries. This was from a 2018 study. I couldn't find updated numbers. Single A in 2018, the average minor league baseball player at Single A made $6,000 a year. Double A was $9,350 and Triple A was $15,000.
Wow.
That's the top. That's not the pros. That's the top minor league. The average player made $15,000. It's hard to imagine those guys won't make more in college. And again, I get baseball. I mean, you're only going to have a few guys, but the top guys are going to get picked high in the draft. They're going to make more than $15,000 a year in college, right?
The interesting thing that we could actually see is the group of guys who normally would have gone to that double or triple A ball stick around in college. They make more money off the NIL, and then these guys who potentially wouldn't have made the double or triple A's actually could, in theory, go to them now because they're going to need players, right? And you might end up by seeing more people make money. Well, here's some interesting things, though, about these that's going on. Texas was one of 3 states to pass a law banning high school players from earning money. However, believe it or not, it's already reconsidering this law after viewers left early. Carroll High, which is the school that he plays for, their opening game is being aired on ESPNU, and it's being played at Cowboy Stadium. And that was mostly and largely, almost entirely, because they wanted to see this stud quarterback play.
He was the number 1 player in the country.
He's not going to be there. He left. He's gone. So this is definitely going to impact high. And you know, there's a great conversation to have about what this is going to do for college and what this is going to do for professional sports. And I think there's a lot of good that it can do for it. But I could see it very well being a bad thing for high school sports.
I mean, if we know one thing, it's that you don't mess with high school football in the state of Texas, right?
But here's what's crazy to me, Stephen, is that at some point, in order to save high school football or high school basketball or other sports, they're going to start letting these high schoolers make money off their NIL as well. Mm-hmm. And there can probably be an argument made about that being fair. But what's it going to be like when the QB walks in and he's making more money than your entire high school coaching staff? When he's making money and no one else on the team is. When he's making money more than... I mean, like, he's making a donation to the school, and now the stinking field that he's playing on is named after him because he's bringing in that kind of bank. What's that going to do? I mean, like that, I don't know. We're starting to get into an area that's weird, and you and I we're both very much in favor of athletes being able to be compensated for their name, for their image, for their likeness, for their skills, whatever. You know, we're not necessarily. I don't think either one of us agree that this was necessarily the right or the best way, but it was a maybe step in the right direction. But we did both say that there were some dangers, and I think we might be seeing a danger here.
Well, I'll close with 2 thoughts. One is, I don't think you overreact here. I don't think the answer is this one guy is leaving high school early to go play in college to make money. I don't think you overreact and change the law, change the rules, allow everybody to get paid, because that's just, I don't think that situation is going to arise time and time again. And if a few guys leave early, I understand that hurts the high school team, but I think you're better off in the long run, like you mentioned. So you don't have these issues with coaches getting paid less. You don't have these issues with the field being named after a kid. You don't have these issues where the starting quarterback's making, $500,000 and nobody
more
else
than every one of his teachers. Why am I going to listen to my math teacher when I'm like,
exactly?
I could buy your house right now, and you could just be homeless and go teach somewhere else.
So I don't think you overreact and allow them to get paid. I think you make them wait until they get to college. If guys want to leave early and do it, I just don't think you overreact. On the flip side, I think, and I could be totally wrong here, but I think you are looking at this as, not you specifically, but I think people are looking at this and they're panicking, right? I think they're saying, oh my gosh, all these kids are going to be millionaires in college. There's no more money now than there was before. People are going to reallocate their marketing dollars, but there's no more money now than there was before, right? These companies, Dr. Pepper's not printing more money to sign DJ Uiagalelei. That's not happening. So let's let this play out for a few years. Let's see what happens. And I think what you're going to see is these companies say, you know what? I don't think it's worth it to pay this guy $100,000 to be in my commercials. I'm not seeing the return on my investment like I want. And so you may still have Dr. Pepper and some of these companies that it works out for. But I think you're going to see a whole lot more of these random deals with, Joe Schmo going down to the local car dealership and getting a free car that he gets to lease for a year. And once these kids start realizing that, and this is something we're talking about at work, I work in an accounting firm. This is something we've been in conversations about, trying to figure out if we want to help with this or not. This is not free money. Kids view this as free money. It's not free money.
Right.
It's tax. That free car they get is not a free car.
Even worse than the tax ramifications, the contractual obligations that they're put with these companies too.
Exactly. And so the first kid that signs this deal and then he gets caught smoking pot, what does that do to his contract? How does that play out? Does he lose all that money? So you're going to see a lot of issues arise over the next couple of years. Right now, it's the Wild West. It's Pandora's box. We've opened it. Nobody knows what's going to happen. But let's let it play out for a couple of years. Let's all pump the brakes. Let's not overreact. And let's reevaluate. And maybe this does, I mean, it's obviously going to change college athletics, but maybe this changes it forever. But maybe this is just another one of those flash in the pan situations, right? The college football playoff was going to ruin college football, remember? The expansion of the
but I don't think anyone was really.
tournament.
I don't think really anyone was saying that outside of the BCS people. I think your average person was good with it.
But people panicked whenever the Southwest Conference disbanded back when. I mean, people don't like change.
We don't like change. I agree with that.
And this is a massive change. But let's wait and see how much of a change this actually is.
Well, I think one of the great points that you mentioned was it's new right now, so we're seeing a lot of things happen, and let's see how these companies see a return on their investment. How is the fast food chain here in Tennessee? Are they going to look back at their numbers and say, you know what? We sold just as many hot dogs when we weren't giving $200,000 to this basketball player as we were when we were. Let's not renew this contract. And additionally, I think we're also going to see, and we see it here, I don't have it in front of me because that article wouldn't pull up, but the one company that this football player signed with was this soft drink company that also does suicide prevention stuff. I don't know. It's kind of a weird little company, but that company said we signed him because he has 400,000 influences on his social media accounts, yada, yada, yada. And we thought he'd be a great ambassador for our brand. But, I think same thing. At the end of the day, are they going to look back and say, okay, this wasn't really worth the money that we had to pay into it? And we're getting good conversation in the chat from Jen, great friend of the pod, great friend of the program. And she's talking about, the benefits that the athletes already get with scholarship, with the facilities. That's a great thing we want to talk about in a future episode. But then a really important thing that I think plays into this high school one, and that's, these athletes that are now making big money at ages 18 through 22, do they know how to manage it? Now, I know some universities are teaching them, or at least giving them access to learn how to properly manage it, and that's good. And that's another scary thing with some of these young kids that are doing it is, do they have those same resources? Do they have the ability to sit down with someone who says, yes, you just got cut a check from Dr. Pepper for $500,000. You need to know that $52,000 of that's going straight to the IRS. You need to know that another $21,000 of that's going to pay this. Do they have that? Because guarantee someone's going to get really surprised come tax season.
Oh yeah. Well, one thing we mentioned when we had this discussion at work was you have kids that are going to get these big contracts, have these big tax bills, and they're all stars, right? So they're going to say, "I'll wait and pay that until I get my signing bonus."
Right.
And then you have a situation, God forbid, like Trey Smith.
Yeah.
Blood clots in his lungs. He was able to come back from it and play. What if that ended his career?
Yeah.
He's deferred $250,000 in tax payments, and now he doesn't get the $2 million signing bonus that he thought he was going to get to cover that. Now what does he do? Yeah. So I think we all just have to wait and see how this plays out. And again, it could be what everybody's panicked about. It could be that bad, right? It could happen. But I think we've seen time and again that everything kind of settles back down to somewhere in the middle. And I think you'll have some guys get paid a lot of money. I think you'll have a lot of guys that think they're going to get paid a lot of money not get there.
Yep. For sure. All right, good conversation. There's going to be more that we have to discuss and cover about something like the NIL because it is going to be something that radically changes and has an impact
bring
on
back college football,
sports, and things like that. Speaking about that, before we get into Mount Rushmore, we don't have a lot of time because we're already over on our time for the night. But the AP Top 25 was released today, preseason Top 25. Did you look at it?
I saw Alabama, Oklahoma were 1-2. That's as far.
Yeah. All right, just top 5 real quick to see, or top 10. Number 10, North Carolina. We talked about them last week.
Mm-hmm.
Number 9, Notre Dame. Number 8, Cincinnati. Number 7, Iowa State. Number 6, Texas A&M. Number 5, Georgia. Number 4, Ohio State. Number 3, Clemson. Number 2, Oklahoma. Number 1, Alabama. As always, these preseason things are way too early, but always fun to look at, always fun to see, and if nothing else, it tells us that college football is right around the corner, which is a great thing. But now,
let's do it,
my friends. It is time for our favorite segment of the show. That's right, it is time for our Mount Rushmore segment. This is the time where we break down our top 4 and a couple of honorable mentions of some random, weird, crazy topic. And tonight we're going to talk about our Mount Rushmore of best fast food fries. Now, before we start this list, Steven, I have to know, because this could change things, and I feel like we've talked about this before, not during a podcast, but while chatting.
It's Five Guys fast food.
It is Five Guys fast food.
Do they have a drive-thru?
That's my thing. If it doesn't have a drive-thru, it's not fast food, right?
I would think so.
Okay, we're counting. If it doesn't have a drive-thru,
because that opens up like Fuddruckers and
right, a lot of things.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. We'll say no.
Okay. Start
it's
us off.
Honorable mention though.
No, because it doesn't have a drive-thru.
Their fries are so good. Though.
It's a great fry. I'll give you that. All right, give us your Mount Rushmore.
Okay, I'll go first. You're gonna hate my first one. I read your notes.
You already.
So yeah. So number 4.
Are you starting with 4? Okay, go ahead.
Zaxby's. I love Zaxby's fries. You can get them under seasoned at times, but you can always ask for extra seasoning. I know that you're not gonna like it, but I love Zaxby's. Number 3, Wendy's. It's a good fry, good sauces there. I think sauces help make the fry. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, McDonald's. It's a good fry, nice salty, nice flavor. Number 1, Chick-fil-A. I love me some Chick-fil-A fries.
Okay.
Just obsessed with Chick-fil-A in general. Which is
literally the worst list of fries I've ever heard in my life, with the exception of maybe a couple that are on there.
Honorable mention, Arby's.
Okay. Now, Arby's has crinkle cut fries now, so what are we talking about?
Those are terrible.
Okay.
Have you tried them?
No.
Hot garbage.
Anyone who goes to Arby and gets a fry and doesn't get a curly fry deserves to have to drink a hot cup of grease or something. I don't know.
I agree. So
burn away your taste buds because you don't use them properly anyway.
That's fair. I was there one day. I was like, you know what? Let's try it. Bad idea. Don't do it.
Yeah, they had them for $1 there for a while. So I don't fault you for trying something new, but all I'm saying is anyone who
I won't do it again if that's fair.
All right. First of all, Iron Ranger in the chat is telling us that Dairy Queen belongs in the top 4. Here's what I'll have to tell you, Jaron, is I have had Dairy Queen fries before, but it's been a really long time because there are no Dairy Queens close to us that are full food service. There used to be one that was ice cream only, and there is one that I ate at a while back, and I did eat some fries from it, but it was one of those things where it was like grab food because we hadn't eaten all day and like eat in the car while we drive an hour and a half back home kind of thing. So I remember consuming the chicken and the fries. I remember it being nourishment to my body and enjoying everything I ate, but not memorable enough to even remember if it was a straight fry, if it was a crinkle cut fry. I don't remember anything about the fry itself. So I'll trust you on that because I know that you, like me, are a great connoisseur of food. But here's my Mount Rushmore of fast food fries. Number 4, Wendy's. They switched the recipe to their fry a couple of years ago. They went to the sea salt, a little bit bigger fry. It's a good fry now. It's fine. It's good. Number 3, I have to admit this one was hard to put on there, but I put Popeyes. So here's why Popeyes doesn't belong to be on there, because sometimes you get them and there's like 3 fries that are stuck together and you know that they were just frozen in the bag and you're eating frozen fries thrown in some grease. But they have good seasoning on them. They're really good. Like you said, sometimes the dip makes the fry, and they have blackened ranch at Popeyes, which is just a fantastic thing to dip a French fry in.
We could do sauces next week.
Okay. Number 2, I'm sticking with what I think was an honorable mention for you, and that's Arby's fries. I love a good curly fry. Now, I will say this. I always have a caveat here. I don't like the ones that are like super soggy. I like crispy curly fries.
I think that's true for all fries.
I know, but sometimes you can get like the Arby's ones that are like just super kind of like,
Yeah, I'm with
I
you.
don't know, falling apart. I don't like those so much, but give me a good crispy curly fry and some Arby's sauce, and it's pretty hard to beat. And then, of course, the number one French fry out there is the McDonald's fry. It's great. It's good by itself. It's good in some ketchup. It's just hard to beat a fresh McDonald's fry, right? Honorable mention for me, I will give the Chick-fil-A waffle fry an honorable mention. It is a good fry. I'm not a huge fan of waffle fries in general, but they do them right. As long as I don't have to eat any of the ends, then my caveat, Chet, is that that I like them. What'd you say?
I call them butt fries.
They call them butt fries. I was trying to
That's
be.
what I call them.
I was trying to be PG in our
My
podcast.
My wife eats those for me. I don't have to do that.
Yeah, I don't like them. They're the worst part of it, and it just feels like I always get a disappropriate amount of them in there. And then keep it off my plate, crinkle cut fries. There are a few places that have a good crinkle cut fry, and as long as they're extra salty and covered in ketchup, they're fine. I'll eat them. But my wife loves crinkle cut fries. She'll go out of her way to get a crinkle cut fry, and I just don't want. I don't want anything to do with it. Now, see, if I go to Zaxby's, I get their chips. I don't want their fry. It's not good for their soggy.
Did you see they got rid of their fried pickles?
I'm not surprised. They want to ruin my life. They don't like me.
Yeah, no, Chick-fil-A fries are the best. It's fine.
No, though they're not, so that's okay. No sauce makes them. No sauce elevates them above a McDonald's fry. Jaron, I did some research today, and I saw a lot of people saying KFC fries were good, but I've never had them. Yeah. If I'm going to KFC and I'm getting a side, I'm getting like mac and cheese or mashed potatoes and gravy or coleslaw or something like that.
Worst fry? Steak and Shake?
Yeah. I mean, steak and Shake is...
The first 10 seconds, they're fine.
No, I mean, Steak and Shake, at least the one by us, is just not good food no matter what you eat, right? So, Cookout has terrible fries in my opinion.
Cookout's... I can't eat Cookout. It's too greasy for me.
Yeah. I get that, Jaron. Yeah, the kids would get fries for sure. All right, Steven, do you have anything else that you need to talk about tonight before we sign off and go play some video games?
I think I'm good, other than to say that Chick-fil-A fries are the best. Mm-hmm. That's all there's to it.
Okay, well, no, it's fine. You are 100% entitled to be wrong in any of our discussions. You
for this
usually
fry talk.
are.
I think we got to keep the fry talk going. You can You can cut the podcast.
In my head, we'll keep from fry talk going as we do some gameplay. If you are joining us, yeah, see, Chet, I agree with that. Steven's never had Brahms, or at least I don't think he's had it very much.
No, I have not. I will say though, In-N-Outs. Now, see, here's the thing: In-N-Out fries are okay, but the what do they call it?
Animal style or whatever.
Animal style.
That's a game changer.
Yeah, that's probably not fair to do though.
I mean, it's kind of like Sonic. I don't like Sonic, and if I go to Sonic, I'm going to get tots, obviously.
Tater tots are great. Yeah.
But if I get chili cheese fries from Sonic, they'll be fine. I'll enjoy it.
Or you could get chili cheese tots.
Well, I know. I'm not saying that wouldn't be better. I'm just saying if you put stuff on it, of course it's going to make it better. Okay. Hey, we're going to wrap up this episode because we've gone long. If you are watching us on... if you're watching us live on Twitch, thank you so much for being here. We've had an incredible night. Let me give you a shout out to those of you guys that have been so supportive tonight because you are worthy of getting a little bit of a shout out here on stream. King Cal gifted a sub. King Cal hosted us with one viewer. Iron Ranger resubbed himself. Jen Saki's one gifted a sub out to Point Break. She also cheered several hundred bits. Thank you for that. Iron Ranger with the 5 gifted subs. We appreciate you. For that, King Cal, another 500 bits, Saki's with another 400 bits, and then Jaron Iron Ranger with a sub to Whitey. Thank you guys so much for some incredible support tonight. If you are listening to this on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app, we encourage you to join us live. Get in a part of the conversation with us. But whatever you do, be sure to give us a like, give us a follow. We're on social media. We're in our Discord. You can find all that information in our show notes. We thank you so much for being a part of this episode. This has been Season 3, Episode 3 of the Sports Corner Podcast, where we have been talking about the Big Ten, getting ready for the college football season, talking about the NIL and how it relates to high school football and high school sports, and of course, breaking out our favorite fries. Until next time, we've had great Steven. My name is Nick. Thank you so much for listening.
El Taco has fries.